Welcome back to the Eric Krown crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start to this nice Thursday morning over here from Helsinki, Finland. And wanted to follow up on especially the short-term time frame analysis that we were looking at yesterday, because we didn't really speak too much about it. We said that, hey, below about 30,500, I would be looking at this as a bit of a bull trap with moves back down to the lowest of the range. Until then, all of the higher term time frame stuff is still very much, unchanged right here. So we'll go over a little bit of the higher term time frame stuff today. However, it's going to be mostly a focus of lower term time frame things, as that's where all of the action is happening right here, right now. So with that in mind, I want to actually jump right into it, starting off with the get-go here. So let's go straight into the charts here. And basically, we've already kind of seen the move that you would expect based off of the break of about 30,500 to 30,600 area right here. So with that in mind, what's most likely to happen next here? Well, I do want to combine a few different pieces of analysis together to kind of get what's most likely in the short term, and then kind of explain how that fits in the long-term picture. So first, and maybe even foremost, honestly, because this has been so damn consistent, which is absolutely hilarious, I want to call out the funny rates actually on the short-term timeframes. Yes, for the past couple days here, we did see positive funny rates, very slightly positive funny rates, but yes, they were positive indeed. Now we're actually seeing pretty significant negative rates, negative 0.013%. So that does mean that shorts are paying longs to hold their positions. And to be fair, they're in profits right now, so no big deal. But understand that that does give off a little bit of a squeeze potential right there in the short term, not on any other like super higher term time frame, obviously, but in the very, very short term right here. So let's start to line that up with other pieces of analysis to see if anything else corroborates that story, of which I'm going to go over here into the short term time frame stochastic momentum. As we do see, the hourly has not just hit a maximum, I wouldn't say a maximum, that's not the right terminology, but an extreme here on HVP of stochastic volatility. But we also do see hourly stochastic momentum turning up and will be upside postured as long as Bitcoin's above 29,500. So what does this kind of align with? Bitcoin's probably found a little bit of a local low right here. And if we go into the buy hourly, I imagine this one's probably just starting to turn. Yes, indeed it is. 29,550 going to be the magical number right there. And then of course, once we start to bleed into the 4 hour and perhaps even the 6 hour, we will notice that this is still corrective, obviously, but that number for resolution to turn back onto the upside is going to massively change coming into the next closing period. As you can see, 31,330, and that is going to be updated in, just about an hour from now. So I would keep an eye on that, because that likely does get the next sort of momentum pivot going onwards and forwards from here for the short-term timeframes. Also, on top of that, if we do go into the lower-term timeframes, I imagine, or at least I would expect, if we're going to see a bounce, some potential hidden bullish divergence. And what do you know? There we have it on the 4 hour building up right now. That'll be confirmed on the next closure, again coming in about an hour and 5 minutes and 57 seconds. Especially with any sort of a closure here or higher. But if you do want to be a little bit more on the, conservative side, let's say, then perhaps you do wait for a closure of about 30,100, maybe at least on an hourly. This is being recorded on BitMax.co, by the way. But ultimately, that would have short-term targets a little bit higher. So the question is, where would those targets be? Well, in these cases, I like to use fib retracements to kind of get the areas of interest to the upside in this case. And we can see that the 382 is coming in right around about 30,450-ish region, which essentially is basically that breakdown that we saw that, at least in my sort of philosophy, it implied a bit of a bull trap. I almost said bear trap right there. Obviously not a fucking bear trap. It's a bull trap in this case, with moves down back around here. And then after that point, I would just be looking at this as a range resolution. So I'd actually move this blue box down to be a little more in alignment with the 382. We could just say 30,450 or 30,500 if you want to round up, whichever one is fine. And then of course a move above there, and I would be looking for a short-term extension somewhere around the 0.5, which is 30,830. And realistically, here's where we're going to start to bleed into the higher term time frame. So this is where things are going. I hope to bring things full circle here, because I think this is rather interesting. So keep in mind where the 618 is. That's the same sort of short-term range lows that we were looking at yesterday and the day prior at 31,200. Very, very important. A move back above that region, especially on a 4 hour closing basis, would, at least in the way that I look at things, and I'll explain why this is important in a second or right after this, would imply continuation actually on this, on this rally to probably new highs, or at least another test towards 32,500-ish region. By contrast, I'm going to come up with a major continuation for like downside in this case, which you know, is definitely possible right here, but obviously it's gonna be most dependent on today's daily closure. But in this case right here, I want to pull back on this chart, and I know that I'm probably gonna get a little bit of hate for this right now, because obviously this one is still actually suggesting that the upside signal is still valid here. The upside signal based upon, of course, daily BBWP, daily stochastic momentum, and then of course, you know, those prior directions, which on average have given about 20% moves. If you're not familiar with this, or if you're new on this channel, understand that, or just, you know, go back to the last few days of video, or the last couple of weeks of videos, as it's been explained ad nauseum there. And I want to make this video a little bit more on the shorter side. Anyways, this signal is actually still valid, as we said yesterday, as long as the daily stochastic momentum oscillator is still remaining to the upside. That is the criteria for that back testing that I've done on this one. And in this case, we can now look at the stochastic momentum pivot on this at 29,150, which actually did move up a little bit from yesterday. Yesterday was about 29,000 even, but now 29,150 is going to be the downside pivot for this. So what would that essentially imply if Bitcoin were to close below there, or realistically even just anywhere close to there around end of day? Very likely we see this one continue on to the daily range lows, the prior range lows essentially, which is like just basically like 28.5 to 28,000 even. Probably another bounce included right there, but at that point, you know, do have to be looking for that bounce to very likely provide continuation to the downside. Now, here's the thing, you know, we've just been looking at Bitcoin, obviously. I've actually taken a bit of a look at some of the altcoins this morning. Most of them don't look fucking good, so it does make me consider that we could very easily see that happen in this case. So if that were to happen, that's where essentially I'd be looking next. And yeah, probably looking at overall another sweep of our current lows, you know, maybe a little bit later this month. Again, I need to be very careful in the way that I relate these ideas, because when we talk about the daily, that's not necessarily the macro. But when we talk about the macro, basically included yesterday, which perhaps we can go over for a short period of time here again today, would be in the fundamentals chart, obviously. You know, I do think it's incredibly likely that Bitcoin at some point, maybe not this month, but, you know, depending upon where this next sort of momentum pivot kind of lies by end of day, actually, I think it's going to massively govern it. You know, we're very likely going to retest somewhere reasonably close to the lows, or maybe new lows, somewhere down around like 22 to 23,000 bucks, if I had to guess, as of the current moment in time. That's based off of this chart right here, because quite simply put, on the accumulation distribution indicator, we've never, ever seen a Bitcoin macro low, not even once ever. And I'm talking about macro lows only, not major lows, but macro lows, of which we really only have 1, 2, 3, 4 in the history of Bitcoin, without seeing the monthly accumulation distribution indicator get into the red zone, which actually we're in a little bit right now. But specifically, we've seen all of the past macro lows come in around this horizontal green line that you see down here. You can see that we're still, you know, pretty far away from that. So a little bit of a sombering detail right there, as I think at best Bitcoin probably retests somewhere, again, reasonably close to our current macro lows. That could be around end of summer, that could be around end of year, or that could be this month. I don't know. That's probably going to be governed upon that daily closure that I was looking at over here. If we see this below 150 by end of day, I would probably be looking for that to happen this month. And that actually might also start to imply that we might see a lot lower than currently my lowest bearish targets for, like, which are like 20 to 21,000 bucks. But it really all depends on, you know, where this current rally ends. So for right now, what I would say is that if Bitcoin on this chart over here can trade back above the 618, this signal is still very much something to be aware of, and still very much valid, as that would imply, you know, still continuation ultimately over the next, you know, couple weeks, I would say, at least based off the statistical narrative of that back tested signal. Somewhere around, you know, 35,000 bucks, which obviously is one of the good old CME gap fills back and over here, and the 0.5 from the last major range highs to our current lows over here. So in this case, you know, what exactly do I do in these exact moments here? Well, I'm actually just kind of waiting, honestly, because I don't see anything that's like super obvious right now, except for the very short-term timeframes, which do suggest likely a bounce try to the upside first, and then the question is, how high do we get? Do we get stopped out at like 30,500? Okay, pretty fucking likely, pretty fucking bad. If we get stopped, if it starts to go back above about 31,200, okay, Bitcoin Bulaw's still looking good, and this was just a bit of a fake out attempt right here. But do keep in mind that on the daily, I believe, did we confirm hidden bearish evidence? I actually want to see. Yeah, we actually did. That's pretty ugly. That's actually really fucking ugly. Jesus, man. So there's definitely not a lack of downside signals on the higher term time frame still, but I wouldn't look at those as fully validated specifically until we trade back down below this momentum pivot over here, which, to be fair, it is starting to head up back around the edge of the bullish control zone. So you would expect a rejection there if Bitcoin is going to be overall bearish, and that would, happen between today and tomorrow, Friday. So if we see something like that happen, very likely we're going to retest somewhere around the lows, probably even this month, and maybe even new lows this month as well. Although I do think that, keeping up the momentum for this current move is going to be a little bit more on the difficult side in the short term. But perhaps, around end of summer, we'd see some sort of a move similar to that. Anyways, again, all of that is kind of secondary to the macro over here. Again, it's more of a question of like when, to me, when, not if. Bitcoin's going to retest somewhere, again, reasonably close to our current lows. That would be like 25, 26,000 bucks. I think kind of best case scenario, or maybe 27 best case scenario. And then worst case scenario is obviously new lows somewhere down around like 19 to 21,000 bucks. But with that in mind, I think that's a good place to leave off on this video. I have once again forgotten to talk about the sale, but we do have a sale going on right now. As always, with any one of the programs, please do not rush into these things. Make sure that you watch the promotional videos. Like, please, I beg you to watch the promotional videos to make sure that you understand who they're for, who they're not for, what's actually included in them. So, you can have a good idea and make a good decision for yourself if it's even relevant to you or not. Other than that, yes, I have an Instagram, which I've been more actively posting on. I really appreciate the feedback on there. I've been trying to put more sort of different content on there than I do on YouTube, like content that doesn't really fit on YouTube because it's more short form. It's like like a minute or two long at most, but I do think, still matters as well. So if that sort of a venue interests you, definitely check it out in the link description below as well. And then, yeah, we also got Bybit show links there as well if you want to go get wrecked during this range of monstrosity. All right, cool. I think that's a good place for me to leave off. I want to wish you well yet again. Take care, stay safe, and see you hopefully soon.